Welcome to Attribution Time. Today we have Aaron Howerton. Aaron and
Hello,
I
hello.
connected through LinkedIn, and we had a mutual connection. Yarby, shout out. Um, but I got into, I didn't know much about partner ops, and this was really fun. Like we started talking about it, and I realized like there's some similarities to MOPS, but
Yeah.
there's also a complexity to it that's not MOPS. And then you still have to figure out how do we attribute back to partner operations. So
hmm
when we started talking,
Yeah.
it was just like this whole new world. And then I started following you on LinkedIn, and I was like, man, this is actually a lot of fun because this is just something I've never spent a ton of time into. And I would love for others to learn about how are we measuring partner ops? How do you go about partner ops and all of these things? So Aaron, thanks for being on Attribution Time today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you, RB. He's a good connector. He's been doing a lot of that lately for a lot of people, I think. And I think that's great to do. And then I appreciate your outreach too, right? Because when I think about attribution, I always think about partner attribution. And that's because I'm niche down into partnerships, but furthermore into partner operations. It's been where I've been working explicitly for about somewhere between 4 and 5 years right now, through both dedicated roles and blended roles in sales ops and enablement. And then I've got another, 10 years or so in software pre-partnerships that allowed me to be, I think, successful in the partner ops realm when you think about what goes into it. But then attribution is what I like about your content and this conversation is that right now, I think one of the main drivers for partner operations is this conversation of attribution. I've been answering that question for every month, multiple times a month, multiple inquiries in different communities that I'm in about people going, how do you do attribution? How do you do attribution?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's super complicated, but it is interesting to see how often that is a driver for the concept of partner ops kind of in general.
So break down partner ops because when you and I met, and even when I met with you, RB, I was like, I don't quite get like I knew of partnerships. I got that concept.
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of people that were doing partnerships, but there's this whole operational side of it. And I think you have such a great perspective on it. So break that down for me. What is partner ops?
Well, you're very complimentary. First, I have to we have to give credit where credit's due, I think, in partner ops. So to understand partner ops, you actually have to understand that channel operations has been around for 30 plus years, right? This is your typical old school reseller distributor networks where I'm going to sell product. I need to get that out to partners who are going to resell, distribute, place it. It comes from this physical operation. In the software industry, it was still very much the same. Channel
Yeah.
resellers would buy licensing. We distribute the licensing to them. They would then give those licenses out, and we didn't know much about their customers, and the partners were key to our business. In a SaaS model, that looks a lot different. And so, to me, I think there's a subtle difference between channel operations, which channel as a word, right, can mean any tranche, any group of whatever, right? I've
Yeah.
been saying this a lot, not to offend direct people, but like direct is a channel to revenue, technically
Right.
in the traditional sense of the word channel. But in
Yeah.
the industry, channel typically means reseller. So when I say partner operations, it's just a way to broaden out what we focus on. There are lots of professionals with lots of experience in channel and resell operations specifically. When you get into partner operations, that's to me, it's more encompassing of the new models of partnership, which is where everybody's chasing attribution. It's great. Well, we have resellers, but now we're shifting our resellers into maybe these agencies that are more services driven, or we have referral partners and they're not quite affiliates because they're not necessarily like blocking and blowing like links and doing the SEO game, but they're not quite agency because they're just sending us deals. And so we have different
Yeah.
levels like within commercial partnerships. But then you have tech partnerships or ISV partnerships, and you might have OEM partnerships or publication partnerships. And so in SaaS, we have all these different models of partnerships that are evolving. And that's where partner operations comes into play. And it's this recognition that as companies start to broaden out their ecosystem play, they're looking for new ways to go to market because those traditional methods are starting to kind of fade, especially in light of what's happening with like our major email providers and the
Right.
inability like outreach and Google and Yahoo shutting down all this stuff, right? Like huge implications for how you're going to go to market.
Yeah.
Partnerships would be a part of that. Partner ops for me is any and all operational rhythms. And I also include experience in this. That's my current role as partner operations and experience manager at a company called Samsara. So my job is the way I see it is I'm an advocate for partner operations and experience into the company, and I'm
Hmm.
working cross-functionally with every group that might have any tie to partnership. So that could be customer success, it could be legal. I'm talking to a product owner this week about our marketplace and integration partners.
Yeah.
It could be directly with our partnership team and the PAMs who manage accounts. It's direct sales, it's marketing. So if you talk about the history of partner ops too, I have to always give credit to marketing because the original
Yeah.
partner ops professionals come out of marketing. Because when you bring partnerships in, the first thing you want to do, like, great, we need some help. We want to run some campaigns. We need marketing support. They go to the marketing team. Somebody gets flagged as like part-time partner marketing, and they are the first people to do anything really structured operationally because they're trying to build and structure campaigns and MDF.
Yeah.
And like that's also a precursor to this concept of dedicated partner operations. So I find myself mostly I'm dipping into a lot of other people's wheelhouses and constantly having to figure out like, great, how can I help you? How do we elevate the way we're thinking about what we're doing? And then when it gets to attribution in particular, that again, that's IT, that's systems, that's sales ops, that's rev ops.
Yeah.
So for me, partner ops is a lot of being aware of what's happening across functionally. It is advocating for more visibility for partnerships, better experience for anyone that touches partnerships, and helping drive that consistency of that experience into these other organizations who just don't know much about partnerships. That's a
Yeah.
long-winded explanation. I apologize.
No, that's good. I mean, for those who are listening, it might be a new world just to think about it. Because again, when you and I first connected, partner ops was very much what you had mentioned, where it came from marketing. So my experience within partner operations, it wasn't even really operations. It was a part
Yeah.
of the marketing operations group. You have partnerships, and you were somehow trying to track or record some way in which that was of value.
Hmm.
And so that was where, for me, that was the rub, and where I was like, this is something where we need to be able to understand this a little bit better as this grows, because as companies scale and continue to enhance their efforts, they're going to have partnerships, right? If you're a small group,
Yep.
you have partnerships, but the scale of that is limited. What I also really liked about what you shared there is kind of the advocate piece. That's something where everyone's always doing that, but having like a dedicated person to say, hey, like this, I'm gonna advocate for this, and I'm gonna make sure we're building relationships, not just externally with the partners, but internally, and making sure there's value in this.
Yeah.
I talk about this with Drew Knoll a bit, and the entire go-to-market process. You have to be able to understand what each of these points of engagement, how does that help you scale, right? So we think of attribution. So this is where my attribution mind gets a little bit nerdy, but you think about attribution
Yeah.
of, yeah, you can get into campaigns, or we can be able to tie back partnerships through some form of channel. But also, when you have an internal advocate that's able to help teams understand the value of this, are you scaling? Is this actually bringing more value to the organization by having those things? And and how do you measure that? Not
Yeah.
just, and that measurement's more for partner ops, but like there's a value in that as well.
It's not just for partner ops though. And this is where my mindset
Right.
might be a little bit more different and strategic. I like the strategic work of, hey, let's sit down with marketing. Marketing, walk me through your attribution models. And I'm also pretty technical in the sense of I think of attribution as a technical problem more than a strategic problem. Like we absolutely know, you and I would probably both agree that if we're going to invest resources in a thing, we need to know if that thing provides an ROI. Well, how do we
Yeah.
do that? We build attribution models. So that's a huge word. It just means I want to attribute this to that. Okay, did this, like my kids are in school? Did this help my kid do
Yeah.
well? Right. So I think about it from a technical model, which is where marketing comes into play because marketing attribution's been there for a while, right? Marketing
Yeah.
ops, and this is where, in talking to some professionals, it's helpful to get this because I don't have the background that marketing ops has been an evolving space. The idea of a marketing ops professional now, 10 years ago, didn't exist. It was we have marketing,
Mhm.
and then all these tools started showing up, and ops started coming out of the growth of the technology that helped facilitate those things. And so you have some people that became really good at they're great at content production. They see the idea, they can do the presentations, they know how to build a webinar, and they put all that together. And then you have other marketing people who are like, yeah, that's great and fine, but here's how you structure your
Yeah.
contact list. Here's how you keep your contacts clean. Here's how you build accounts. Here's how we build books and segments. And here's how we actually they like the technology aspect, right? Partner ops is kind of moving in that very same direction. It's been so great to have people point that out to me that we're a blended group right now. If you look at what partner ops professionals do, and I know lots over the past year, especially since I got laid off last October, a year ago, last October. That's crazy. It's been a year. My network has blown up with people as I've started writing
Mhm.
and talking more about this. And we're all over the place. I keep a job board specifically because when you say, hey, what's partner ops? I go look at the job board. Here's I've got 30 or 40 jobs on there right now that are all different. in terms
Yeah.
of scope and what they ask and what they demand. I've got another professional I talked to last week. She and I were talking about, like, we have the same basic approach to like the building blocks and foundational stuff that we would do. She is vastly more interested in the RevOps side of partner ops. She wants to be deep in the weeds on the technical side, building out the
Yeah.
models and stuff. And I want to be on the other side of saying, great, here's what we need. Here's the strategy. Here's the requirements, guys. You guys go build
Mm.
that so I can go work on other stuff. And so that, but we're both partner ops. We both exist in the same thing. And so we don't have great industry designations right now in terms of what our future holds. But I think these conversations around attribution are critical to help us figure that out, because this is the question that everybody wants to ask. We're investing in partnerships, and partnerships can be an easily a $500,000 investment in the first 2 years just to get the talent you need to do the work. So when I think about what I could do for the industry, when I think about attribution, it's not that I necessarily know here's the dedicated specific solution I think that everybody should have right now. It's more, if I think about advocating for partner operations specifically, if you hire a partner leader, I've been telling people your next hire needs to be an ops person, not
Yeah.
because you need somebody to necessarily be hands and feet, like hands in the weeds and down there doing the work. There's always going to be, well, in partnerships, and you probably feel this too, there's always going to be a little bit of IC level work. You always going to have to get your hands dirty and get in there.
Yeah.
But if you hire that ops person to be strategically minded on internal advocation, you can run a lot faster for this exact reason. I can sit down
Yeah.
with marketing. I know marketing language. I know marketing priorities. I understand that space because I've worked with those people. So I can sit down and have a conversation and layer in that partner conversation with them to help get their insight into what's going to work best at this company.
Yeah. So let's get into how do you measure that then? So because I that makes sense. I hear that. And I have no way to push back on it because I don't live in that space. So, but how do you end up measuring it, right? Like, how do you
Yeah.
like,
Well, how do you measure it in marketing, right? Think about that.
yeah,
What would you do from a marketing perspective? What's the typical vehicle for measuring attribution?
yeah, I think that the base level, right, when we think of channel attribution, right, or when we
Yep.
think of multi-touch attribution, the typical structure is either channel centric or campaign centric. Those two
Hmm.
can work synonymously, but those are going to be your main focuses, right? And so, even when you and I were talking, you mentioned like it can be as simple as just you have a campaign, and if you're able to draw to this partner is able to do X, Y,
Yep.
Z and bring this many leads or this much engagement, we just pull it to that campaign, right? And be able to
Yeah.
measure it that way. Um, but for you, and you're saying, hey, you got a partner, you got someone who's running partnerships, and then you have someone you need to bring an operations person alongside that. How do you have to
Yeah.
show value there,
Yeah.
right? You have to
For
be
the
able to say that
operations role.
yeah, we're bringing in
Yeah.
enough money to do that. So what do you do there?
So I think one of the headaches that a lot of companies have, and this is probably driving it in light of like all the massive cuts. I don't know if you paid attention to the partnership space in particular, but partnerships has been gutted at a lot of companies this
Mm.
past year in light of all the technology recessions, right? The pandemic opened up this huge boom because that was a scale issue. People weren't ready for the demand that showed up when everybody had to go remote. So they had to hire up to fill the gaps. That's
Mm.
operational challenges at the end of the day. When demand levels off at the following, everyone should have expected it to, that wasn't forever. We normalized all those people. You're great. We don't need all the hands now because we can manage the demand. That's all operational issues. When you look at partnerships, partnerships is constantly like from day one, partnerships is on the hook for great. We're investing in you. Where's the ROI? Your first partner leader, that can be anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 in base, just depending on the experience you go, what kind of package you can offer, what their risk tolerance is, lots of things, right?
Mm.
That's a lot of money to throw out the door. And then you need a second one. So to your point, how do you justify the ROI? Well, one is you have to make sure that your leadership is not looking at partnerships as a campaign. That's kind of the mentality I've
Mm.
noticed is great. Like with a marketing campaign, we can throw $50,000 on the table. You can run the numbers, you can build the model, and in 6 months, if we don't have a return, we can turn that pipeline off. And I think
Right.
some leaderships take that same mentality toward partnerships. Great, we're going to funnel some money into you. We want to see a return on investment, and the way they count it, right, is going to be dollars in the door. It's
Right.
revenue generation, deal registration. So how many opportunities did we generate from our partners? And that's where attribution really becomes technical.
Right.
Because if you don't have, at the very basic, right? If you think about campaigns, And I'll say this, I am very, very weak on marketing rhythms and campaigns because I've always worked with really excellent people and I haven't had to think about it.
Sure.
So that's on
Okay.
me. Not, that's what I like to work with people
Shout
that are
out to
smarter
all
than
those
me.
awesome people. That's right.
A
That's
hundred
the good
percent. It
move.
makes my
Yeah.
life so much easier. So, but if you talk about like you want to structure a major parent campaign and child campaigns, and then when you're working with partners to do a shared campaign, that's relatively easy because you already have a structure for campaigns. You add a new campaign, child campaign that tag it to the partner at the campaign object, and this is all technical, right? But now you can at least, and they give them the link and they share it. Now you have some attribution right there at the campaign level.
Yep.
But when you go to opportunities and shifting opportunities, I've always found that the story of how people get into the funnel is not
Mhm.
very clear. We have lots of technical notes. Here's a field, here's a field, here's a field, last touch, recent touch,
Yeah.
first touch. But it's all technical. And then those are sometimes even coded like
Yeah.
MTS-GTM-40623 because it was 23 and a 6 month and that was a GTM rhythm, like whatever.
Yeah.
But we're not telling the narrative of how people get there. And that's where the partnership to me is important because you need to know what partner brought that in the door. At the
Right.
opportunity level though, right? If I'm building this out, I'm actually going in and I'm not worried so much about opportunity attribution right off the bat as I am how is the CRM set up for my team? Because if your
How to just
partnership
measure,
team,
right? Just to measure the
well,
engagement.
how many partner accounts do you have in the system that are active, right? Like at the end of the
Okay.
day, if we're doing a campaign, then you can add the partner name to the campaign label. Maybe they have an account in Salesforce, maybe not, but you can do it at the campaign. You're not worried about program management or account management because your job is marketing,
Right.
right? And attribution shows up, and that's the first time anybody starts to really put demands on the CRM to be more cohesive. So we add a field on a partner opportunity or a partner lead, and we call it partner. And that's where you get single point attribution. But the thing you mentioned a minute ago, which is becoming more in demand, is multi point attribution.
Right.
You can't do that on a single object because now you're going to really, well, you can, but it gets really cluttered. And your
Yeah.
system, regardless of whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot, and I know there's going to be debates on this and people aren't going to like it when I say this, they are
Yeah.
both expensive when you get into what you need for partnerships because you need custom fields, you need custom objects. Both of them have high licensing costs around those things.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that in this other model, where for me it's all about program management, I need to know partners and programs. And I'm still experimenting with this conceptually because I think every company wants to do it different. You have all these other questions like, do we have
Yeah.
dual account model, for example? You might be able to speak to that, right? Like,
Yeah.
do we have one customer account and one partner account? And why do we have two accounts? And what's the need? And who are
Yeah.
we protecting? And so that's where it gets technical,
Well,
right? I'm going to
yeah,
go
exactly.
in.
That the
Anyways, I'll
challenge in
shut up for a
that.
minute. You can respond.
No, you're good. No, this is good thought. And because it's a real world example in this is, I work in a space where multi-touch attribution is done through a third-party platform. It plugs into the CRM,
Yep.
and the reason being is as exactly like you just mentioned, it gives you these custom objects. It immediately ingests all those in there, all those data points, all these custom fields, so that you don't have to go and try to build it and try to think of every scenario.
Hmm.
But to your point, then you have to think about, well, what's the structure of my CRM? Right. And
Yeah.
this is where you need someone from operations in this to think about these processes because if I've seen it more often than not, the partner lives within the account, the same account that they're selling to.
Hmm.
And so it gets a little bit muddled of, well, who's doing what? Because attribution tools are just taking every single point of touch that happens and tying it back to the opportunity, which is the correct move, right? You got to
Yep.
gradually move away and focus solely on the opportunity and say, what's the journey here? But if the partner's highly engaged, it can actually drown out the engagement of the account and
If you're tracking
and
it, I
vice
think that's a,
versa, right?
yeah, I think it's a question, right? Like we don't
Yeah,
have the ability or the technology to get all the partner touch points for a single opportunity, right? At the very base, and when people say, Aaron, like what would you do for like what do you want to measure? How do you measure partners? Like literally when I talk to RevOps people, and this is an interesting thing, RevOps right now is just like it's a big buzzword. It's been around for about, in my opinion, 2 or 3 years, right? It's
yeah,
maturing as a concept, but that includes sales ops, marketing ops, and CS ops under one banner of RevOps. Notice what's missing in the big headline
yeah,
for RevOps is a concept of partner operations. And I think that's probably okay because I actually think that all three of these banners, RevOps, like CS, sales, you have partner ops marketing, you have partner ops sales, you have partner ops customer success. So I see partner ops as this like more foundational cross-functional role, because all three of those groups who are focused on a more of a niche within their space have some level of partnership. If I'm a customer success manager and I have a renewal coming up, it's important for me to know if a partner needs to be involved in that
Right.
renewal. So how do we have
Yep.
visibility for the partner at the customer account that they need to be involved in the sales process, how they helped out last time? Same thing for the sales process. Did this come from a partner? Does partner have complementary tech that we need to do? Now we're getting into enablement, right?
Yep.
These are all partner operational functions of how do we increase visibility for partnership and partnership understanding within the account. But when you get to attribution, to me, it's pretty simple. Like, how do I know if partners are like impactful? I want to know by partner and by program all the same stuff you want to know at direct. So people come up and say, "Great, what
Yep.
metrics are you tracking?" I want to know close won rate. I want to know deal velocity. I want to know
Yep.
average time to close. I want to know time and stage. I want to know average deal size. And then I want all of that for direct. Like a dream state for me is definitely like, here's my direct reports. And then at the top of the report, I have a partner program filter, and all the reports will be updated to show me, great, here's all the same stats limited by the specific program that I picked out because we've got the right
Yep.
attribution. Or I want to drill down to a very specific partner and see their specific performance on these same metrics. And that sounds easy, right? That's just two more
Yep.
filters at the end of the day
Yep.
on your direct dashboard. And if you can get there, I feel like you've got a huge accomplishment. You don't need a bunch of custom reports just to support
Yep.
partnerships.
Yep.
This is where I look at the integrated approach. You need
Yeah.
partnerships to become a part of the conversation. Now, I can say that, but you probably already know as well, like getting to that point technically is more difficult than it sounds. And that's where partner
Yeah.
operations tends to come in and drive those conversations.
Well, and to your point, that's where an advocate, or having someone who's working across those things to make sure that there's an agreement upon how we measure that. Yeah,
Hmm.
what I like what you said there is around how there's communication across all of them, and that's one thing I think attribution, at least the way I view marketing attribution, is you kind of take the marketing piece out of it and say this is the entire go-to-market motion
Yeah,
and understanding it. And I think attribution really enables teams to do that when done correctly, right? The attribution tool, whichever one is bought, or even if it's just done in-house on a single platform such as a CRM,
yeah.
the goal is that you need to work across teams. Like you can't do without it. It's not true
Yeah.
attribution at that point in my mind. Um, and one thing I want to note here, I want to get your take on this, but I'm with you, RevOps. I was a part of a consulting firm that was, we used the RevOps term because that was the hot term at the time. We're trying
Yeah.
to try to be with the cool kids in that, right? Um, my take right now is I think GTM is kind of taking over, and that GTM's been around forever, right? Like
Sure.
go to
Yeah.
market, right? It's,
Yeah.
but what I'm seeing, it's like it's a bit of this RevOps where except it extends past it of what you said, right? Where it's just,
Yeah.
it's sales and marketing and, CS or whatever. I, I think the GTM is everything involved in it, right? And it's
Hmm.
just we're just figuring out who's managing what. And so I'm seeing where sometimes you have a rev op executive and they have sales and marketing is underneath them. But then
Hmm.
I also see it at times where you have a go-to-market, someone with a go-to-market title, and now they have sales, marketing, and then just more and more, right? Because they keep
Yeah.
adding on to it. And so I think
Yeah.
teams are just trying to figure out how do we actually just get everyone to work together, and they
Yeah.
just call it a
I
bunch of
mean,
different things.
the
Um,
architecture of a hierarchy, right? It's all over the place in terms of what
yeah,
companies do and when they evolve to one state or the other. And this is where I
yeah,
was mentioning before, like when you look at partner ops, it just depends on the company. It depends on what they
yeah,
need from the role specifically. Part of why I chase down the role that I have at Samsara is that it's a program role. I don't sit on any operational teams as the ops manager. I own operations and experience from a programmatic perspective. So my
mhm,
job is to look across all of our partner programs, and I will be building out our development roadmap for all of our systems and technology over the next 3 years, early next year. So I come in taking on some existing projects, but my goal is to provide that strategic oversight to what we need to be doing operationally, but then let the operational rhythm and development of those things from a systems perspective live in the existing teams. So it's not like I'm going to be doing some of the daily operations and the stuff. It's that I'm getting a handle on our processes and tools of bringing that level of, let's look at this more intentionally about what we're going to do. Let's try not
Yeah.
moving from like a retroactive state to a proactive state. But that's just one approach, and that approach really, really appealed to me. I mentioned I've got a friend that lives as a VP. She lives under a VP of sales as partner ops under the RevOps team. Her focus is very
Yeah.
specifically, to your point, that the things you would call the GTM data, GTM rhythms for partnerships and analytics, which is another
Yeah.
aspect of it. But it's just one aspect of it. This is where I like the role I'm in because I have that mandate to go talk to anyone that I need to, anywhere that I need to, cross functionally to try to drive change that creates a better experience for partners, internal stakeholders, and for our customers as they engage with partners.
Yeah, I think that's what's been fun about it. I mean, that was what was really fun getting into marketing operations five,
Yeah.
6 years ago, is that there was a lot of new things, like
Yeah.
you said, it's been around about 10 years, but getting involved in those just it kind of meant a little bit of everything. And it's still, even to today, it does that. And listening to you, following you on LinkedIn, I've kind of learned it's like there's different approaches to this partner operations. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's been kind of fun to learn about those things. I've also listened to your podcast, and you get partner in there twice. So you got partner ops partner.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the podcast, and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I started that when I lost my job, right? That was about finding value. I got to push into a community. Partnership leaders had invited me in to contribute and engage there, which was really important when I lost my job. Just have a place to be, to add value, to continue to feel like I'm adding value, be professional in that sense. And then that podcast just kind of evolved over time. It started out as CRO behind the SaaS. So I was going to talk about all things SaaS. And then I eventually just kind of narrowed it down to really get focused on the partner operations because that's what people kept asking me about. And then now the name itself is more tongue in cheek. It's got partner in there twice, playing the SEO game, But that's my community brand is what I would consider it. So the podcast is all about me being open about my journey, my story, conversations that I've not had, mentors. I've never had a lot of mentors, so I've had to figure a lot of this out on my own. So it's just an effort to be open,
Well, Aaron,
transparent,
there's not a lot
and
of
build that
I,
community.
the partner ops world is so new too. So I feel like the mentor space, it's
But
like
that's the thing, right?
you
Like
got
even just professionally in general, I've
yeah,
not had good mentors. Most of my mentors, I
yeah,
will say, all the mentors I have had have been women that have been phenomenal and helped coach me toward a better understanding of myself and what I want for my career. But you're right. I didn't realize when I got into this like 5 years ago and I started looking for partner ops people, they didn't exist. You couldn't find the
yeah,
title because I didn't know I needed to look for channel or resell operations. Well, now I know
yeah,
that, but there's a lot more of us in partner operations. So now that's more
yeah,
about building community. I'm working with some other people right now to try to figure out what are we going to do next year to give a better voice. So right now it's a growth brand, right? It's just me trying to find a way to give back, and that's the voice that I do it under. So I appreciate you giving some
yeah.
attention to it.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed listening to it. If you follow those who are listening, if you follow Aaron on LinkedIn, he'll post those from time to time. I've enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about partner ops, but also just kind of the day in the life of Aaron as well.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on. And yeah, I this was a really fun attribution time session because it's just a little bit different, and I think we approached attribution a little bit different today. So I appreciate you breaking that down.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry if we went long. I feel like we're not done either. So
Yeah.
it's just a big conversation. It's one that I
Part
really
two
love talking
coming
about.
coming
So I
your way.
appreciate the open door. Yeah. Okay.
That's right.